Hey guys, my name is Niclas Huschenbeth and today I would like to share with you a game I played in a US chess league against Grandmaster Wesley So. And probably most of you heard of this guy. He's one of the strongest players in the world, number 14 currently, and he has an incredibly high elo of 2755. So very strong player, and it was a pleasure for me to play against such a strong player, and I would like to analyze this game right now. Alright, so let's go ahead. I was white, and by the way, I'm playing for the Baltimore Kingfishers in the US Chess League, and we were playing against the St. Louis Archbishops. I think that's the right name. And it's a 4-player match, so 4 players play against 4 players of the other team. And we are playing on board 1. Alright, so let's go ahead. I start with e4, and he went for the Sicilian, or more specifically the Nido variation, which arises after 5th a6 right here. And I'm going for the sharpest line there, is bishop g5, and I'm actually playing this variation with both colors. I also play the Nido myself with black, so I have quite some knowledge in all these variations. So he played knight bd7, bishop c4, and now queen b6, obviously attacking a pawn on b2, so I simply play bishop b3, and it's all well-known theory. And now he played e6, and there are a lot of different approaches to this position here. Players have tried to castle kingside or castle queenside, but I played bishop takes f6, which might look a little bit odd because you're saying, why do you give up the bishop here? And the idea is I'm actually transposing to the Gelfand variation by playing this move. And just to show you guys what I mean, the Gelfand variation could also rise after e6 at this point, f4, knight bd7, and now bishop c4, queen b6, and here white takes on f6 with the bishop and plays bishop b3, and now we have reached the same position. So I want to transpose to this line because I have quite some knowledge there, and I hoped I could maybe a little bit surprise him here. And the two main moves are clearly in this position e5 or bishop e7. e5 is actually, there are some very interesting lines where white plays bishop a4 check, and black usually even goes for king e7 here, just some crazy lines. And I was hoping for that, but he surprised me in this position. He played queen to c5, and I've not seen this move before, but it's actually quite logical. For one, the queen is quite well placed on c5, and on the other, queen is preventing the pawn advance e5, plus freeing up space for the b pawn, so black can advance with b5. But I still don't think that's the most critical move of this variation. I believe bishop e7 should be the most logical and also best move. Okay, so here I played queen to d3, obviously preparing queenside castle. And I wasn't sure if I should play the queen to d3 or d2, but I thought it might make sense to play the queen to d3 in order to protect the pawn on e4. I mean, there are certainly advantages to both moves, and it's not easy to say which one is better, queen d2 or queen d3. So b5, queenside castle, and you can see that I'm much better developed here. I've already developed all my pieces I've castled, whereas black is still lacking some development. You can see both bishops are still on the original squares, the king is in the center. So black certainly has to hurry up and finish developing. And he played bishop e7. And notice that there are already some ideas here. If, for example, bishop b7, there are already some ideas to just sacrifice something in the center, like e5 here. Ideas to sacrifice on e6, and I think can even take on e5 here and play rook hg1. There are ideas to sacrifice on e6. So this can become very dangerous for black pretty quickly. So you played correctly bishop e7, and I want to make something work here as well. I looked at e5, but it's not really working, and I just want to show you some variations I looked at. e5, d takes e5, f takes e5, queen takes e5, and now maybe one drawback of playing the queen to d3 is that black is always having these checks on the c1, h6 diagonal. So for example, if I played knight c6, black could give a check on g5. Actually, he could also simply play queen c7 and everything is protected. So I was looking at queen f3, attacking the rook on a8, obviously. Now rook b8, knight c6, and here we have exactly this problem that my king is on c1, black can give a check and then pin the knight. But the variation is not over yet. White can play knight d5, and I looked at its move, but I thought that after e takes d5, so just for you to see the idea, if bishop takes c6, then could either take on f6 or even could play knight c6, king f8, queen takes c6, and white is obviously enjoying beautiful compensation here for the pawn. But black can give the exchange here with e takes d5, knight takes b8 and castle, and I looked at this and I thought that's not right. My knight is pretty much trapped on b8, and this should be better for black, and it is actually. And another move which is interesting, and I want to play this but I couldn't really get it to work, was g4. I mean, it's also just a standard move in this neither kinds of positions, that white is advancing his kingside pawns and obviously want to play g5, but the critical move is knight takes g4. Now queen f3 looks good, also having an eye again on the long diagonal and ideas with e5, but black can play e5 himself and protecting the knight on g4. And if knight f5 now, then simply bishop takes f5, e takes f5 and queen e3, and black is exchanging the queens and obviously coping with this double threat. But at this point, and I looked at this, but I was not sure about it. I looked at bishop takes f7 and it actually works. If black takes this bishop, then white is having really good attacking options here. This might be just crushing, but black doesn't have to take. He can play king f8, and now still the knight is attacked on d4. So knight f5, but here I just want to show you this variation. Bishop d5 now, rook c8, e takes f5, and now again, unfortunately, black can exchange the queens. And we see it so many times. It would be so great if the king would simply be on b1 and not on c1. And this should be about equal. So I think my move is good. I played simply a normal logical move here, rook h to e1, simply preparing e5, and there's not much black can do against it because he doesn't want to play e5 himself, which just open up the squares d5 and f5 for my knights. So he castled and now played e5. Another option would have been f5, but it seems the position should be roughly equal now. Knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook a7, knight f3. I have this beautiful square on d5. On the other hand, black is having the bishop pair, and he can maybe create some attacking prospects here on the king side, queen side, excuse me. So I think e5 is just the right move. It's gotta be. D takes e5, f takes e5, and the knight is kind of running out of space here. Obviously knight g4 or knight h5 would run into queen f3. Knight d7 would be answered by knight takes e6, clearly, and it's just winning. And knight d5 just looks terrible too. For example, take and e6 might be pretty good here, at least, if there's not something better for white. So the only move really for black to play is knight e8. And here, I mentioned it so many times before, at some point I should have played my king to b1, and exactly here was the right point. Because right now, black doesn't really have a good move himself. He would like to play bishop b7, but again there are problems with the pawn on e6, and I can actually take here and take on f8 and e6, and this is clearly better for white. And another move black could play is knight to c7, but then knight e4, queen b6, c3, and just looks beautiful here. Bishop comes to c2, knights are beautiful in the center. White is definitely enjoying the advantage. By the way, after knight c7, knight e4, this time black cannot take on e5 because of knight c6, and you can again see the difference. With the king on c1, black could simply give a check now on f4, but now this is not possible, and he cannot protect both pieces, the bishop and the queen. So I should have played king b1. But I play queen g3, which also looks natural because I'm preparing knight e4 now, but it is not as strong. Because now black can actually play bishop b7, and there's a difference, because now if I take on e6, for one, black could also play queen c6 here, but he has a different option, which is queen c4. And I didn't see this, but the computer pointed out that here black can even play bishop h4 and attacking my queen, my rook. And after queen h3, bishop takes e1, queen takes h7 check, king takes f8, rook takes e1, bishop takes g2. Black is up a piece for 2 pawns, and his king is a little bit unsafe, but black is certainly better here. So I played knight e4, and black cannot allow these 2 knights here in the center. So obviously he took on e4, and I was quite content with my position here. I thought all my pieces are active, I maybe have some attacking prospects. So I was not unhappy. He played a5, certainly a good move, putting some pressure on my bishop, and I had to do something about the threat a4, so I played a4 myself. Another move I looked at was bishop g4, again with ideas to sacrifice on e6, but black has a very strong counter here, which is h5, and suddenly I don't have any good moves. I was looking at knight takes e6, but it's not enough here. It would be nice to somehow get a piece to the h file, but it's not really working out. For example, queen h3 just answered by queen takes e5, so this is not working. So I played a4 to stop the black advance on the queen side. Knight c7, and now finally black has harmonized his piece again. All his pieces are into play, the rooks are connected, and it was now the question, how do I proceed from here? And I said, okay, let's try to attack the black king. I played rook g4. And I thought that might be a useful move anyway, because I'm provoking this weakness with g6 now. And I thought, why not go on and play h4 and just try to open up files. And the problem here and later for black is that he can't really play h5 because I would just take on g6. And here I think black is even losing because of knight takes e6. Yeah. So he can't do that, but he found very good defending resource, king h8, and the idea is if I now play h5, black would simply take this pawn, and I have to move the rook away from the g file, and then black can himself play the rook to the g file, and it's no good. I was actually looking at rook h1 here, but it's not working. Would almost work, but again my king is on the wrong square. Black can play bishop g5 check and h6, and I can resign pretty much. So I said, okay, I have to prepare this move h5, and I played actually rook to h1. I made very clear, okay, I want to play h5, I want to open up files against the king and mate you, pretty much. And here my opponent made a mistake. He played rook f to d8, which looks like a very natural move to bring the rook to the d file and attack the knight, but then white is actually better. He should have either, well, actually there are many options. So let's have a look. Black could force a draw here by playing h5. I would take on g6, and here black doesn't take on e5 but takes on d4, and I have nothing better than to give a perpetual here. But well, of course he wasn't satisfied with a draw, because I mean, after all, he is 200 ELO rating points above me. And he had other options. He could have played f5 at this point. Actually, he played a one move later, but then it's not as good. But still, the position should be around equal. And here, very important move to stop a4 from black is to play rook a4. And now you can see that this position is pretty solid. Seems not to be easy for black to get through this defensive wall here of the bishop, the rook, and the two pawns. So this was one possibility. Another one would be to take on a4 here, and then to bring the knight into play on d5. And could continue with h5, g5. Of course, black has to keep everything closed. He can't open up the h file. h6, knight b6, knight b3. Again, it's very important to not allow this pawn advance to a4. And this position is certainly still totally unclear. I mean, I have kind of the control over the fourth rank, but black has also his options here and should be around equal. But rook fd8, and now I simply played c3, and for one, I'm protecting the knight, but even more important, I am planning to bring the bishop into the attack. And actually, I thought at this point that black could play b5 here and would be better, but I missed something. And the thing I missed is, he didn't play b4, he played f5, but here I can play bishop c2, and I missed that this is suddenly a super strong threat, queen d3, and there's absolutely nothing black can do against preventing the checkmate on h7. So this is the huge problem here for black in this position, which is why Wesley So decided to play this radical move f5. And just notice that now I can't really take on g6, because black wouldn't take back, he would simply take on d4, and I don't have anything against the black king. So I had to take en passant on f6, and here, well, now I was running a little bit low on time, so that was definitely one point which made it very difficult for me to play the position, because otherwise I might have thought about it a little bit longer. I took on e6 here, and that's just too greedy. I can't take this pawn. I could have played a quite natural move, I would say, bishop c2. It's not that difficult to spot. And the point is that black can now not take on d4, because obviously in the end this knight on c7 would be hanging. So, and of course I have my own threats here to play with h5, to sacrifice even on g6, and white is better here. For example, rook d7, h5, g takes h5, and now I can play queen f4, and there are some ideas here. Threaten the bishop, and one possible variation is rook f8, knight b3, and the queen has to keep protecting the pawn, so queen e5, and now exchange queens, rook e4, and this endgame is certainly favoring white because he has the better pawn structure and all the pawns are weak. I mean, just look at them here. h5, e6, a5. This is slightly better for white. But I took on e6, and many people think that different colored bishops are very drawish, but there's a specific exception for that, or maybe most people don't learn it the right way. Different colored bishops are very drawish if they are the only piece remaining on the board, but if there are more pieces such as rooks and queens, usually the side who's attacking has the advantage. And it's clearly black who's coming first here by playing b4 now. And you can see now opening up, clearly planning to open up my king. Yeah, when I first took on e6, I maybe thought I could play c4 here, but then I thought, no, I can't really do this. And actually it's refuted in a very simple way. Black can play queen c6 with a simple double attack on pawn and bishop, and my position is just falling apart here. So that's not working. I decided to first of all play h5, because black can now not take on c3. He would be too slow. Now I'm opening up the h file and just crushing attack, and my king is for now safe. There are no more checks. So black can't do that, and if he has to play g takes h5 or g5, that's certainly an improvement of my position. My opponent played g5. Keep everything closed. And now rook c4, and now queen e7. I was actually afraid of queen b6, but still I'm able to keep everything together. Queen b6 looks very strong because queen is attacking the bishop, and if the bishop moves, let's say to f5, then simply b takes c3, b takes c3, rook a b8, and I will not survive that. I mean, there's no way. Yeah, I mean, how do I defend even against queen b2? But, and I didn't see this in the game, but the computer pointed out, queen f3 is possible, very strong, with the idea that after queen takes e6, I can now play rook c6 and win back the piece on f6, because rook d6 would fail to rook takes, queen takes, and, well, losing the rook on a8. So black should probably play rook f8, but again rook c6, and you can see how all the white pieces are playing on the white squares and just working perfectly together, and here the white position is fine. So queen e7 is definitely the right move here. And now my bishop is attacked, so bishop f5, and here b takes c3. And obviously this is threat of rook c7 in the position, but my opponent thought, okay, I can take on c3, and if rook c7 then queen b4. But better than b takes c3 would have been, or maybe better, I'm not completely sure actually. I thought a bishop e5 might be an option, just to take this idea of rook c7 out of the position. And then rook e1, and actually a funny move here is bishop f4 check, but it's not that great for black. Can take, g takes f4, rook takes e7, f takes g3, and this should certainly be fine for white with the active pieces and already 2 pawns for the exchange. However, black can play rook e8, and now I have nothing better but to sacrifice the exchange, but still I think I have good drawing chances here. Here black should play b3, it's his best chance, and now rook d4, rook a8, and h6, and it's very unclear. I think white has good drawing chances, but it's not that clear. Alright, let's get back to the game. B takes c3. So I already mentioned rook c7 wouldn't be great because of queen b4, and I have one check, but that's about it, and that's over. And bishop e6 doesn't help. Yeah, I mean, queen e7 or king h8, it's black has many options. But instead of moving the rook to c7, I can move the queen, and now obviously the queen cannot move because it would be just checkmate immediately. And here my opponent went wrong. He played queen e3 check. It would be very natural to just take on b2, and it would be actually the right way. King b1, and now you don't want to allow this rook on the 7th rank, so you don't take on c7. I was actually expecting rook a7 here, so now I have to take, rook takes, but actually this position is equal because I can play h6, and this combination of the bishop and the pawn is just very unpleasant for black because his king is kind of unsafe, and my pieces are active. I can even support the bishop on f5 with g4, and this should be a draw. However, black has one better move here to play h6 himself in order to prevent this idea of white playing h6. And now queen takes e7, bishop takes e7, rook e1, bishop f6, rook c7, and this should be also, I believe it should be a draw, because white again is very active, and I think that should be draw. Alright, let's go back to this position and see what my opponent did. He played queen e3 check, king b1, and now he played rook a7. And this looks very strong, but I think he missed something. And what he missed is rook takes c3. Out of the blue, I just take this pawn, and it's just working out perfectly for me here, because there are just too many dependencies. The black queen is protecting the rook, the bishop is protecting this rook, and well, the queen is attacked as well. And it's actually funny, if black takes on c3, I can take on d8 with check. And we end up this endgame where I'm a pawn up. And black doesn't have anything better either. Well, he has something better than that, but he has no way to actually maintain equality. If he plays queen f2, I can once again chase the queen, rook c2. And still, if queen takes f5, queen takes a7, black cannot make use out of this pin, rook c8, just rook c1, nothing happening here. And white is better. So my opponent took on c7, rook takes e3, and we reach this endgame, and I'm actually up a pawn. But it's still not that easy here. So my opponent played rook b8, b3, and now rook c4, and you have to remember I was pretty short on time here, and maybe 3 or 4 minutes left, of course with half a minute increment per move, but still not easy. So now obviously this pawn on a4 is attacked, and king a2 kind of runs into rook f4. I could have played it, actually computer gives a crazy line here to play g4, but this just looks nuts pretty much. I mean, you wouldn't allow this in a practical game. This looks so dangerous, but it works out. And white is actually having some advantage here, but I'm pretty sure it should be a draw. However, instead of what I played rook he1. The best move would have been bishop d7. So protecting a pawn and also avoiding this idea of rook f4 attacking the bishop and f5 and threatening to enter on the second rank. And here I certainly have some winning chances. I still believe that if black defends accurately, it should be a draw, but I have some chances. Also after rook he1, I should have some chance, but still it remains a draw whatsoever. So I actually missed my opponent's move here. He still took an a4. I thought that wasn't possible because I want to exchange the rook on the b file, which is pinning the pawn. But after rook e8, he simply plays king g7, and if I take on b8, he gives a check and wins back the rook. But I had one more trick up my sleeve, h6 check, and he cannot take because rook h1 check, and now king g7 would be mate, and if rook h4, then I take, and then I'm up a rook. But he doesn't have to take, he can simply play king f7, and now I have nothing better than to take on b8, rook a1, king c2, rook takes e1, but at least I'm winning this pawn now on h7. And here I was a little bit surprised he went for taking the pawn on g2. I really expected rook h1 because I have no convenient way to protect this pawn on h6. I mean, one possibility would be bishop g8 check, king g6, h7, but this is really not a setup you want to have. The pawn on h7, the bishop on g8, and actually black can even now go for the pawn on g2, and this should be a draw. Maybe the best try in this position would have been rook b7 check, bishop e7, and now bishop g8 check. Now black has to take, rook takes e7, and now black has to find a very precise move here. I think if he takes, I still have some pretty good chances here to win in this position. Definitely some practical chances. but he can play, instead of taking, he can play rook h4 with the idea to exchange this pawn pair on the queen side. Rook g7, king h8, rook takes g5, a4, and this is a draw because I cannot keep both pawns together. I will not keep both pawns. But my opponent played rook e2 check, king d3, and rook takes g2. And now I keep this dangerous pawn on h6. So rook h2, rook b7 check, bishop e7, and h7. And now he played g4. And this is the problem, that he's now creating counterplay himself. I cannot have everything under control. And obviously I cannot take this pawn because the pawn h7 would be hanging. So first of all, I played rook b8 and repeated moves because I really had like 1 minute left here. And note that g3 doesn't work because of h8 queen, rook takes g2, and now I can stop this pawn from being promoted by bishop e6 and rook g8, and I think this position is winning for white. So he played bishop f6, I gave a check again, and now I didn't want to make a draw quite yet, so I played king e3, g3, but now here I missed a way to further pressure for win with rook c7, and the idea is to take this square away from the black bishop. So now king f6 probably black should play, because now g2, king f2, king f6, we have the same variation like in the game, we will see, but with the rook on c7 this is a big difference because now there's no bishop c5 threat. I can simply move the bishop to e4. I will win the pawn on g2 sooner or later, and black is still facing a very difficult defending task. So black maybe should play king f6. Here I can now win the exchange, but the position nevertheless remains a draw. Black can play king g4 here, or he even can play bishop c5 and aim toward the queen side, and I check this position with the table base, and it's interesting. If white is to move, white is winning, but if black is to move, black is drawing this position. But obviously black still has to find some precise moves here. I just want to show you how could continue here, but black is just sticking to the pawn with his king, and it is a draw. But still, of course, that's a very good try, and I could have tried that for a very long time. So that certainly was my best try. But I could play king f3 here, and I actually missed that here I can't play king g1 anymore because, well, black is still getting a queen even though I win the rook. So that doesn't work. And I was panicking a little bit because I was like, oh no, I can't lose that now. But it's pretty simple here to draw it. I just played h8 queen, rook takes, and king takes g2. Offered a draw here, but Wesley So want to play some more moves, so we did. And I will just show you how it ends, but I don't think that requires any more commentary here. Now, I just took off the last pawn pair, b4, some more checks, and we played till only the kings were remaining, which doesn't happen to me that often either. So a well-deserved draw, I would say, because we both had our chances. I maybe had a little bit more chance than him, but in the end there was no point really in the game where any one of us had a decisive advantage. So I think it was a pretty high quality of the game. No big blunders, some inaccuracies, but overall no big blunders. There were some critical moments in the game. The first one certainly when I could have played bishop c2 instead of just taking this pawn on e6. And then later on, again in the end game, I had a good chance to play for a win with rook c7, but I was just too low on time. Alright, if you have any questions about this game, just post them below. I would like to read your opinions. And if you enjoyed this video, I would also be happy if you subscribe to my channel by clicking the icon on the top right corner and then just click on subscribe, and you will not miss any of my upcoming videos. Alright, thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.